Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to The Way Through. I'm your host, Bonnie Worth, and of course, as every single week, and I know I say it time and time again, so incredibly grateful to have the chance to have these beautiful, enriching conversations with you here on the Empower channel. Now, if you've been tuning in with me for the last couple of weeks, you know that I've been running a little series. It's called the Mastery Series, and this is part 3 today, where we're looking at this higher state, living from a higher state inside of us, what it really means to embody a state of mastery with inside of ourselves. Now, if you're just tuning in for the very first time, welcome. I'm so glad that we are connected and that we found each other in this beautiful universe of ours, where we can come together and maybe something I say really can help and support you on your journey. If you are joining me for the very first time, I really encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 and part 2 of this series, because it's going to make today make even more sense to you. Okay. It doesn't matter what order, it's perfectly fine. It's not saying, oh, you can't listen to this one, go back and listen to the other ones first. No, not at all. Just be here and understand that there's more to the story. And there are 2 other parts of this series that would be really beneficial for you as you go forward on your path. So we're talking about mastery today. So this often feels like everything, according to the ego, as if it's a destination, that there's something that we need to do in order to get there, something that we need to attain after years of effort and certifications and applications, so to speak, to be able to get into a state of being within ourselves that will allow us to, become more fully who we are. In the truth is, it's not a destination. There are no hoops to jump through. There's nothing more than that's required of you other than something inside that just needs to shift, a little internal shift. It's not an external achievement. It's about being able to do a little shift within our own self to connect with a version of ourself that already exists, the version of ourself that already has it all, the version of ourself that knows its worthiness and knows it's abundant and knows it's, successful and knows it's healthy and knows it's vibrant and knows it's limitless and knows, of infinite love and knows all of that already. All of those things. So it is a state of being inside of us. It's not, as I said, external. It's not a action that we need to take, but a deliberate realignment, a subtle shift inside where we realign with who we are, realign with what is the facet of the very, being that is having the human experience. As you've heard, the spiritual being having the human experience. And so this is about alignment to that being, what I always refer to as the angel that exists inside of us. We have 2 parts, right? We've got this little human who has an identity that's rooted in survival, a little human who's scared and who's struggled and has been challenged and feels and has been victimized. And of course, it has. I'm not taking any of that away from you, because God knows with certainty that I have lived through some of the darkest shadows of my own life as well, and have been to those rich, raw, depressive and challenging states within my own psychological and emotional state. So I'm not taking any of that away. And I have great compassion because I've lived through that. And that's a big part of, my purpose of this podcast, the purpose of the work I do, the purpose of, even this conversation here today is so that I can help you to understand where your power lies, where you can access this part of you instead of this human being who knows that there's a spiritual context to them that can understand and be aligned with the very being of life itself, of the life that is looking to breathe you, the life that is looking to express through you, the life that is looking to give you more expanded, high vibrational life. And it's a deliberate realignment within our own self after we've kind of moved through a lot of the other layers, which of course, we can look back on part 1 and part 2, where we can really begin to understand our true nature by understanding the inner self. I mean, in part 1, we looked at how the mind directly influences our reality, about rewiring the neural pathways and clearing the energetic static and releasing all those inherited protective layers, right? I talked about the nervous system and how we need to get our nervous system on board, and so that we can reach those higher states of consciousness and really live and express what, we could say is that authentic power, that light that we're here to express into the world more fully. In part 2, we took a look at what are those invisible barriers? What are those blocks? What's the truth about spiritual blocks? And to understand, what keeps us stuck and keeps us spinning in one place and creating static, where we are muffled out from away from what feels like our origin or our purpose of origin, like what it is we're here to do or express, or how is it that we're here to serve. Well, all that it got muddied up, so to speak, underneath all of that, the barriers that were, getting in the way of having a really sharp intuition to really hear the divine speaking to you, to be able to do this great work that you feel so called to do. What were those barriers? So those was part 1 and part 2. And today we're going to look at the mastery piece of it, to know here, again, it's not a destination, but it's something that arises inside of you. It arises into being a state of being that's intrinsically rooted in an identity of the divine. You see, our little human is rooted in survival. It's rooted in the human condition and fear-based consciousness. And what we're doing now is we're creating an internal realignment so that we are tapping into and connected with the one who has an identity rooted in the divine. Right? The angel that exists inside of us, that spiritual being. And so when we look at mastery, it's about being able to find the alignment through our own conscious action and choice, and that we're altering inside of ourselves the very state of consciousness in which we are moving forward through our lives. So we're looking at what is going to reflect the soul's most lived expansive nature, the soul's divine purpose for being, the thoughts, the mindset of the higher mind that allows for the thought systems and beliefs for us to be connected with, the very paradigms of that which are aligned with a truth that is greater than all of us. A truth that is a part of the oneness, the unity, and the full expression of what is divine and perfect and holy inside of each of us. So it's not something that's fleeting. This isn't something that we try and then it goes away. It's always there. It's always been there. It is the I am of who we are at the highest level. The I am enough, and I am worthy, and I am limitless, and I am infinite abundance, and I am. It's a state of consciousness. It is a state of greater truth of who we are. And so it's something that we can, through our own awareness to this part of us, be able to create a shift in terms of alignment inside to that very source that can allow us to express and experience life and basically breathe a completely different reality. It's something that can be lived. It's something that can be breathed, but it needs us in order to make that happen. So this is where, again, we begin to differentiate between the ego, that limited human self-identity that perceives itself as separate and small and not enough and unworthy, that's driven by fear and doubt or the need for control, right? Where with the higher identity, which I always refer to as the angelic aspect of us, it's the angel inside of us, is this boundless essence that knows itself as infinite, that knows itself as whole, that knows itself as eternally connected to the divine source. Okay? So our ego, that little human, has accumulated all kinds of story content for survival. It's built on strategy. It's built on these fears that have been reinforced sometimes over lifetimes, conditioning from family, conditioning from ancestors, from previous lifetimes that it's operating with, where again, it's perceiving itself as limited and dependent on external circumstances to know its own potential. So, what I mean here, external circumstances to know potential, is we need to go to school to receive, go to the certificate, the certification, to get the doctorate, to get and achieve and accomplish something to prove that we know what we're talking about, or to prove ourselves worthy of doing the work that we're called to do. That there is something, please know, I'm not saying stepping out against educational systems. Again, I believe in them. I went to school. I sent my kids to school. There is value there. I just mean that we're not using it as an excuse or reason as to why we don't step more fully into this call, this purpose that we feel inside of us, because we have this identity of this little human who perceives itself as limited. It's this voice that says, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Right. And who can sometimes believe that we have no power, and that we need to control outcomes in order to be safe. We need to control our life. We have to control or helicopter. We hear about helicopter parenting, but it's like we helicopter our own self so that we're doing all of the things that we need to do in order to control the outcome. This is the part of us that wants to know the answer, that wants to see it first before it believes it. It wants the answer. It wants to know how this is going to work out. It wants what's at the end of the effort, so to speak. So our little human operates in scarcity. It operates in attachment. It operates in the need for validation. And this part of us, and we all have it, this isn't like a you thing and I don't go through this, because God knows I certainly do. There is this part of us, this human condition, this rooted survival instinct that we have, that where we naturally react defensively to change. We react defensively to uncertainty, and we tend to chase, again, those external achievements in order to feel worthy, in order to feel complete, in order to prove that we have value or prove that we're good enough. And so all of it within this conditioned self, this little ego, this little human, is rooted in duality. It sees everything as good versus evil, success versus failure. Okay. There's always the two sides to the coin here. And so when we look at this survival in this physical world of ours, it's where, again, we begin to recognize limitation. Limitation becomes apparent, especially when we're seeking or on this path of our greater spiritual awakening, where we can perceive separation and scarcity, but what it does is it perpetuates cycles of struggle, of self-doubt, of effort and, accomplishment, and doing our spirituality instead of just being spiritual. There's all of this action oriented. So where does that come from? Well, as I said, it's conditioned, which means the roots are in separation. The roots are a part of, the moment we were born. The moment we were born, we were shaped by the environment we were born into. Our understanding of ourselves and the world in those very formative years are what created the foundation. And if we experienced neglect, abandonment, if love was inconsistent or was conditional, which means that we now have subconscious programming of belief systems that believe that we are inherently unworthy and not safe unless we're constantly earning validation. So it creates this foundation of perception that we're separate, we're disconnected, and that we need to do certain things in order to be safe, in order to be loved, and in order to receive even abundance that we crave, whether it's financial, whether it's love, whether it's health, whatever abundance looks like for us as individuals. So as an example, if you were someone who grew up feeling unheard or judged, there would be an internalized idea that your value would depend on external approval. And so over time, wounds like that fester. It's this persistent feeling that that we don't belong. We're separate. We don't belong. We're separated from people, from communities, feel separate in our family. And then at a higher existential level, it begins to create that we're separate from divine love, and we're separate from the universe's support. Okay. So it just, goes on and becomes even more layered. So those wounds create those narratives. I'm alone. I'm unworthy. I'm not protective, right? And those are the things that create those subconscious belief systems that guide our decisions and our perceptions well into adulthood, or whenever we start waking up, right? Whatever point of that awakening starts to take place for us. Where else do they come from? Well, this is also the separation has to do with those belief systems and paradigms, and especially that's handed down in those lineage patterns, right? So we can look to what we've experienced in our own life. This is again, when I talk about conditioning, how it's multi-layered conditioning, because it's what's passed down through our family, through culture, through our ancestors, through past life information, what we're born into and what we carry with us. And so again, the fears, the belief systems, the wounds, everything is inherited, and it creates a collective sense that life is meant, we're meant to struggle in life. Life is meant to be hard, or that safety and abundance are, not available to us, or abundance is available for other people, but not us, right? So there can be multiple generational information here that can, where economic hardship, emotional abandonment, abuse, all of those things that are a part of our system that are so ingrained in what is a collective psyche. Now, when I say collective psyche, it's not just what's familiar and within bloodline, but contributes to the collective psyche of the world itself, of humanity, right? So we look at all of these things that are internal inside of us, that are about scarcity and fragility and vulnerability, and keep us separate from manifesting the change that we wish to be in this world, from manifesting our goals and our dreams, from being able to bring in context an expression of what is a greater fulfillment of purpose in our own life. Now, again, we can look to culture and religion, society systems as well, that reinforce duality. The good, as I said before, the good versus evil, the deserving versus the unworthy, the success versus failure, the us and versus them kind of understanding of it, right? We see that a lot in terms of competition within sports. It's an us versus them. So those kind of narratives create hierarchy, and hierarchy that keeps us divided. It keeps us external from each other. And when we buy into those stories, there can be from the ego having superiority or inferiority. And so either way, it reinforces what is division within ourselves, division from each other, right? But we see ourselves as separate, or we feel separate from other people. Right? So it's just this dualistic thinking and these dualistic information that keeps us isolated, that keeps us competing, that keeps us struggling or in limitation in a very abundant universe. So it fuels conflict and distrust and all those things, because again, it's like we're separated away from, we have to fight over things, right? Where else does it come from? Well, again, those things that have happened to us, what's unresolved, the fears, the wounding that we carry. So the fears, the rejection, the shame, the unworthiness, all of that reinforces that illusion of separation. And it creates this hidden barrier or this hidden layer that keeps us defending and keeps our whole nervous system reacting instead of having calm and openness, which means we're just still running in in this disconnected, we are unprotected, we are not enough, and it's better, better be safe that we stay exactly where we are and don't change anything because it's safer. Don't rock the boat, don't go against the grain, don't stir things up, stay where you are, even though you're completely miserable. I mean, that's really where it comes from, right? So the key in this really, as I said, this is about looking at realignment. This is about shifting from what is the operating system inside of ourselves to a higher operating system. So we begin unraveling. What's at the root. What we begin unraveling separation, where we are consciously looking to address what's embedded, those beliefs, the fears, to recognize here those other protective layers that were formed over time within this lifetime and over time in other lifetimes within the timelines of our ancestors and, those, our whole bloodline, our lineage. And so we look to gradually dissolve that false sense so that we can come in to regulation inside of ourselves with safety, with deeper trust, with more unity. Unity is a unification of our own self. And when we become when we create unity within our own self, mind, body, spirit, or as I said in episode 1 of this, where it is of spirit, body, mind, and body, or spirit, body, and mind, because body, mind work together and go back and forth all the time, where we look at really moving into this, where we come into a unification of our own holistic triangle, where we have more unity in consciousness and unity as a collective, right? So it looks like what we do for ourselves. You've heard it said, the peace that we create in ourselves is going to contribute to the peace of the world. That's exactly what I mean in this as well, where we look at what unity represents. So when we heal those childhood wounds, the ancestral stuff that sits there, all that conditioning, we create more space in ourselves. We create a sense of spaciousness. And where we have spaciousness, which means now we have a container for more light. We have a container for love and abundance and that divine connection, because that now becomes a natural state of being, which means that natural state of being is something that is accessible to us at every single moment. It's not separate, it is accessible. And so it takes what is an internal shift where we are rewiring the information, our architecture, our foundation. We're changing it all, we're shifting it all up, and we're transforming our whole entire self. That's really what this quote unquote healing journey is all about. A transformation of what is disconnection into oneness of unity, of infinite possibility, of what is boundless and limitless, right? So with this awareness, it's like, okay, we need to separate from the illusion so that we can tap into the true essence of who we are, that interconnected part of ours, which is interconnected with all of life. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, this is where we look at, okay, we've got this ego and we want to love this ego, and that the ego serves us, and we're not looking to separate out from our ego. There's a lot of what we could say are spiritual teachings that are out there that say that where the ego gets a really bad rap, they say that we need to get rid of our ego, separate our ego, get rid of it. And that's actually not it. We actually require our ego. Our ego is what brings us this very human experience. And so it's about honoring the ego, loving the ego for its separateness, loving ourselves through all of the mess of life, where we can look that our ego was only trying to protect us. It was only trying to keep us safe. It was helping because our nervous system has been so dysregulated by fear and dysregulated by trauma and dysregulated by anxiety and dysregulated by hyper arousal states, that it was only trying to help to keep us safe. So we look at loving this human, this little human. We look at appreciating the work of this little human, not as a way of creating a challenge and keeping us small, but as a way of having had protecting us the whole entire time. So we look at, okay, this part of us that we don't want to separate out. We want to honor, we want to help to heal, we want to do the rewiring and the reshaping and the acknowledgement, feel our way through and go, okay, now that with all those layers starting to dissolve around me, now this is where I get to understand that there is a part of me and there's a part of you that is an angel, that is of divine essence, a divine essence of higher consciousness that exists inside of all of us, an aspect that resides in that unity, that resides in divine truth, it knows it's inherently complete and loved and worthy and whole. And it's operating from this place inside that already has it all. It already has unconditional love. It already has divine authority. It already has the expanded awareness, right? So this is about recognizing that our true power is not external. It originates from inside of us. And so when we look at, okay, we want to shift to a different state of being where our thoughts, our feelings, and actions are aligned with our higher truth. So this becomes where we're living more centered in this more centered space inside of us where we are in trust. We're in trust with ourselves. We're in trust with the universe. We're in trust with the divine. And rather than trying to control things, it's this part of us that goes, okay, even though this might not be exactly how I thought it might play out, there's an invitation here. And I trust and know this is all going to work out for the highest and greatest good. Right? Sometimes our highest and greatest good isn't a whole lot of fun, my friends, but it is still in our highest and greatest good. So this is that part of us that can embrace these setbacks as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to shift and heal. And it goes from this reacting state. The ego reacts. The ego is an observer from the base point or lens of the wounded self. And what it does is it shifts us into a higher state where we are responding to situations with more compassion instead of reactivity, that we are responding with expressing love to ourselves or expressing a love to someone else without defensiveness, where we're able to articulate boundaries and needs, not demand them, but just express them and share them and voice them. We are in a place where now, instead of this observer of ego self that is looking through the lens of woundedness and looking through the lens of survival, we start to looking at life, all of life, through the lens of the one who is eternal, through the lens, the thought systems, the narratives, the recognition of ourself and others from a place of non-judgment and a place of compassion in a way that we haven't necessarily maybe been able to do before. Now, it's a shift. It's a transition between the ego-based identity to choosing, and it is a choice. So when we talk about the power of our choices, I'm going to tell you this, sweet friends, there is nothing more powerful than choosing to align with who you truly are and then lead your life from there. There is nothing more fulfilling than going, I'm not going to react and I'm going to respond, because in response, we forgive. In response, we move forward. In response, there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no feelings of abandonment and rejection. There's certainty. There's an understanding, and our choices become more deliberate because we're making aligned truth. So we're moving beyond the internal chatter that keeps us in limitation, and instead we begin accessing what is higher awareness in each and every moment. Higher awareness because now we are consciously selecting, consciously choosing to live from our highest frequency. Not our low ego is a low light frequency. Our higher identity is a higher vibration, higher light quotient frequency. And so we can make a subtle but very profound shift inside of us where we gently recalibrate our inner world so that it becomes that divine self becomes more of a default instead of what has been the fear-based little human. So how do we do this? Well, that really comes into all of it, right? So mastery. I mean, what is mastery? Mastery is that we are establishing a way of being. And establishing a way of being isn't saying we're getting it right all the time. So please know, when we look at states of being between the low light aspect of our ego to the higher light vibration and frequency of the higher identity, it's like a switch that can go off and on, off and on, off and on. Okay. It's like, doot, 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 doot. It's constant. Doot, 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 doot. It's like, either way, it's going up, going down. It's constant. So we look at going, okay, this way of being is a living choice. It is a spiritual, we could say, posture where we begin to anchor ourselves in the knowing of our divine being, of the divine being having the human experience, right? So it is a conscious connection that we can seek and attain from moment to moment. Just like the light switch goes on and off, just like from ego, higher self, we want to start catching ourselves when we are in our higher self. We want to consciously choose that alignment. That conscious decision is when a challenge arises, instead of reacting from ego's smallness and defensiveness and wounded self, that instead we pause and we activate inside of ourself a connection to our divine power so that we can respond with clarity, with compassion, with certainty, with trust, and in a different frequency. Because what we are expressing into the world is what we're creating. So when we are expressing anger and resentments and reaction and fear and woundedness in our thoughts, or when challenges come up, we're just creating more of the same. So we want to catch ourselves at those points, and we want to tap into that part of us who has it all, that part of us who is the inner master, that part of us that requires less effort and has more grace, that part of us where through alignment as a practice, a moment by moment, daily, moment by moment practice, where we go out of the confines of that mental structure to a higher vibrational set point. And that's really what it is even when the challenge comes, before we're reacting, we're choosing to respond. And choosing to respond says, I'm going to pause here and breathe and consciously choose to come into alignment with the higher identity, with the angel inside of me, in order to move through this challenge, in order to have the clarity, the precision, the grace to handle it. Now, do we get it right all the time? No, not at all. I love going back to a teaching from Wayne Dyer, and I remember listening to him and how he talked about how we are so conditioned that we keep falling into the same pothole. It's like walking down the street, there's a big pothole, we fall in every single time until, we get hurt, we get wounded, all of it, until we pull ourselves out with awareness, where we come to, hang on a second, I'm going to walk around that pothole and I'm not going to fall in, right? This is exactly it, where we're going to continue to fall into potholes, but we keep catching ourselves. We keep seeking the alignment. We keep seeking that through our conscious choice to come into a powerful shift inside of us that's going to allow for a higher vibrational set point. And the more we choose it, the more that it becomes our way of living and breathing and being in our life. And from this higher vibrational set point, we become greater magnetizers for what it is we're looking to manifest in our life. We begin the people, the opportunities, the circumstances It's like everything, all the pieces come together. We attract higher vibrational relationships, higher vibrational experiences. This is where, again, those prayers seem to happen or miracles seem to take place in our lives. And it's because we're moving from striving and ego doingness into a state of being inside. And that state of being is of higher vibration, which means all of life rearranges so that it matches that higher vibrational state. So how do we do this, right? Again, because our ego goes, but I want to know how to do this. I want to fix this. Okay, one, we don't need to fix anything. It's just awareness. It's just an opportunity inside of ourselves to know ourselves better. Okay. So how do we do this? Well, we want to just really at first, it just comes down to connect with the earth. Allow yourself to get rooted and grounded and connected deeply. Okay. And so that's where we want that stability, right? We need to create the space in our body. And when our body feels safe, when our nervous system is calm, we are open for the expansion. So we do that first. So, just imagine for yourself that you're breathing and you're anchoring yourself down to the core of Mother Earth. From there, we can just activate that higher self. It's really here now where you can just simply say, I am fully embodied and connected to my higher self now. And you can feel a shift of energy. You can feel a vibration. You're going to notice that there's going to be something inside of you that only you are going to be able to recognize as a shift and alignment. Nobody can tell you. I can't tell you I can give you a step, but I can't tell you how that's going to feel. Only you're going to be able to tell inside of you. So trust the experience here. I always like to do that 3 times. I always like to proclaim that 3 times over. I am now connected and aligned and fully embodying my higher self now. I am fully aligned and connected and embodying my higher self now, and just feeling the shift and feeling the shift and feeling the shift, right? So you can just begin to feel the change in frequency and vibration. And when you get there, it's like, whoa, hang on a second. There is a sense of spaciousness. There is a sense of calm. It's there. And so it's from there that we speak. It's where when we do this and go into this expanded state, our whole energy field is harmonizing. Our whole energy field is reshaping and reshifting its own self. And then here, this is breath. Here we breathe to integrate. We breathe to allow this vibration to integrate into the body. We want to allow this to come into our body and to anchor it back into the earth as our baseline. We want to just practice this. I would encourage you to practice this outside of those challenging experiences, because once you become skilled at it, then you can, express this in the moment when you need it. But this is like any practice. This is about closing the gap between your spiritual self and your physical reality. You're closing the gap between that scared little human to that higher authority inside of you. And so it is a shift where you can be aligned with the higher mind, where your decisions, where your actions are rooted and expressed from a place of alignment, where your frequency is of abundance and trust and flow. And that you are, the more often you do this, the more it becomes your set point. And the more it becomes your set point, the easier it is for you to embody your truth, to express your truth, to go out and do the work you feel so called to do, because it's like you begin to breathe life completely different, that you understand and recognize suddenly that you're being breathed, that you aren't the one who's breathing, but there is one inside of you who is effortlessly expressing itself as you and through you in your life. And so embodied mastery is a practice. It is a conscious choice. It is looking at all of the layers and all the unraveling everything that has led you to believe anything other than who you truly are. And so that's self-responsibility. That's mastery. And it is something that needs to be practiced. And it is something that we need to choose. And it is available for me. It's available for you. And it's what really helps to navigate the world around, the challenges, the chaos, the upset. When we choose to live our life from a place of higher identity, we begin to see the beauty of the divine, the reorchestration of creation to match and support what is this higher vibrational living, this place that, again, when we look at the shifts, and you've heard them over the last few years of, of the shifting of reality, of the new earth that's being formed. This is the new earth. This is what the invitations are. And it requires all of us. The world requires all of us to do what we can to bring more light to the planet. And in order to bring more light to the planet, we create more spaciousness to be that very light. All right, sweet friends. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this 3-part series. I really hope that what I've shared over these last 3 weeks has been really helpful and beneficial to you on your journey. Until next time, much love to you.